We're back to talking about famous scientists who were also very good musicians, particularly those who we think may have become better scientists because of their music. And so we're going to talk about somebody very special today, Barbara McClintock. She is an American botanist, and we'll talk about why she's called a botanist rather than a geneticist in a few minutes. But she was born in 1902. She lived until 1992. And she got the 1983 Nobel Prize in Medicine or Physiology for work that she did in genetics in the 1940s. She studied corn, and not the kind of corn that we normally eat, but the kind of corn maybe that you hang on your door in the fall that has all the colors. Because in that corn, she could look into what was going on genetically to look at how individual chromosomes programmed for different colors and other features of those corn kernels. It's something I didn't know until I was studying about Barbara. But corn, each individual kernel is a separate organism. So it has its own genetic identity, one kernel from another. So she could look into that really well. When she was in college, she had considered joining a sorority. She had started down that path and decided she didn't want to do it. She didn't like the exclusionary practices, how some people who wanted to be in didn't get in, the blackballing system. And so she decided, for the first time in her life, she hadn't been a musician as a young person, that she would join a band, and she became a jazz banjo player. And jazz is a very interesting kind of music because the way that it's structured, you have structure. You have a written out set of music, but it's a loose structure. There's room for improvisation. And she noticed years later when she was studying corn, she saw an analogy between jazz music that she had played in college as a jazz banjo person and the kind of changes that happen genetically sometimes with certain kinds of organisms on their chromosomes. And so she started to refer to them as jumping genes, these genes that could transpose and program differently at one point than they do at another. And she published about this in the 1940s. And her work, it was published, but it wasn't accepted by the scientific community. She was pretty much ignored. Maybe some of that had to do with gender. The reason why her title as an education person, her academic title as a botanist, is because she was at Cornell doing her PhD, and women weren't allowed at that point in the 1920s to major in genetics. They were allowed to major in botany. So she studied genetics in the botany department because she was obsessed with genetics. She loved thinking about these kinds of things. And she was figuring all of this out before the double helix pattern was even discovered in the 1950s. And so she figured this jumping genes out and how genes can move to program in different spots and for different things. Really 30 or 40 years before the rest of science caught up with her. When the rest of science caught up with her and realized she had been right all along, she got her Nobel Prize in the 1980s. But it took science a long time to catch up with her. And there's a good chance that she makes that discovery in the 1940s, partly because she had a jazz musician's mind. And she thought about those corn kernels as having a genetic structure, a chromosome structure, but with room for improvisation. So this is my favorite one so far of this series that we've done because she was studying chemistry in a way. I mean, she was coming at it as a botanist, but genetics is still biochemistry. And jazz music, which is what I like to play, informed her science and made her a better scientist, made her one of the best scientists that we have in American history. If you're enjoying this content, please hit like. Please follow me. We're going to do at least a few more of these scientist musicians series. And please encourage your kids in their music lessons. It makes them better thinkers. Having that comparison to the other things they're studying, it's just going to make them better at everything. And music makes life more enjoyable. So we'll see you on the next one.